Prepping America. Ready for anything.
Ready for anything, Thomas. It's Friday, the last Friday of September the 27th, and we're going to what we call Red October. There's going to be a lot of geopolitical, economic risk. We got to talk about nuclear war. We're going to talk about water prepping because the stuff is supposed to hit the fan on the 1st of October. And we're talking about a lot of stuff. And let's go to the ports right away and listen to this gentleman break it all down. This is only part of the port problem, but it's the beginning.
What happens if our seaports go on strike? The strike is set for October 1st, so you better share this with everyone. Because if our ports close, everything we depend on closes with it. Let's talk about what would happen within the month of October. On day one, international fuel shipments are the first to feel the impact. Crude oil tankers stuck offshore means no new fuel entering refineries. By the end of the day, concerns spread across industries as gas stations, trucking companies, and airlines brace for immediate shortages. Everything from fuel to imported goods is at risk, but fuel becomes the most critical loss. By day three, gas stations are starting to run dry and rationing begins. Prices surge as demand skyrockets. Without fuel, trucks can't deliver goods, and the first shortages show up in grocery stores. Businesses relying on imported oil, like refineries, scramble to maintain operations with whatever reserves they have left. The ripple effect starts to hit home. No fuel means no transportation, and without transportation, the flow of goods stop. Day 7. The energy crisis takes hold. Within the first week, the impact of fuel shortage deepens. Trucks, trains, and ships that move essential supplies across the country slow to a halt. Agriculture and manufacturing are crippled, unable to operate without fuel for machinery and transportation. Airlines begin canceling flights, and public transportation services are cut. Gas prices hit all-time highs as panic buying intensifies. By week 2, the power grid struggles and collapse looms. Power plants that rely on imported fuel start to struggle and blackouts spread as they ration what's left. People begin hoarding fuel, and chaos erupts at the pumps. The stock market plummets as industries reliant on global supply chains begin to crumble. The economy falters, and unemployment skyrockets as factories close and businesses shutter. By week 4, total breakdown of society. By the end of the month, the energy crisis and fuel shortages bring society to its knees. Cities erupt into fuel riots, and law enforcement is overwhelmed. With no fuel, food distribution collapses, and starvation becomes a real threat. Communities are left to fend for themselves as fuel reserves dry up completely, leaving transportation, emergency services, and the economy in ruins. Without ports, crude oil can't get in. Without crude oil, fuel can't be made. Without fuel, everything grinds to a halt. When the fuel stops, America stops. And just so we're clear, this could all happen within the month of October. AP out.
So that's from Appalachian Prepper 2.0. We appreciate his view on things. Thomas, I know that's the first time you've seen this video. What is your reaction? Is he accurate? Over hyperbole? What do you think?
I think he's very accurate. I cannot talk about the time frame when it exactly happened, but I'm warning about this for a long time because we've seen it multiple times on the ports. The issue is that we forget too quickly what happened already. It's not that this just happened a very long time ago. It happened recently, right? During COVID. Yep. It's not, how many years is that? 2 years, 3 years, whatever?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Right. That was like kind of the first test run for this entire scenario. And the difference, and I said it before, the difference was that during COVID, we had full warehouses. We have not replenished them. The supply
chain has not hold on. You're established. You're bringing up a major point. We've had disruptions in our supply chains since COVID.
Correct.
We've gone through all the shells you're talking about. So now the decline could accelerate faster because the warehouses are not full. That's what you're alluding to.
Correct. I mean, just look around. Look around. People are not really looking at, for example, a simple thing. We're building now a building for someone off grid, and just look at the lumber price already, right? So it's already going up. A simple 2x4 by 8 is again at 380. We were already down at 280. So people are always talking about, oh, the prices are coming down, the fuel is coming down. Hey, fellas, when I moved to California, a gallon of fuel was $1.79. Now it's still at what, 314, 325 something?
And I was in California 10 days ago for the premiere of my movie, Splintering Babylon. And I'm going to say this, Thomas. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say it was $5 a gallon in San Diego, up in Yuba City. So North and South California, I was in both places. Gasoline was $5 a gallon.
There you go. My sister just came. She flew in Los Angeles. Sorry, in San Francisco. Number one, she was shocked about what happened to that city. She said, "It looks like Mad Max here.
Yeah,
This is crazy." And then she looked at the fuel prices and everything else. She said, "This is insane." I said, "Yep, I told you so. And now you saw it with your own eyes." Everything boarded up. She said, "We were in a good hotel. We opened the window. It smells like pee and other things, right? I don't even want to mention it. This is like Mad Max. I mean, a lot of Americans don't realize this, how bad. We are in really bad shape. And we are in bad shape with our entire supply chain still. It has never balanced out so far since they shut the world down.
You're absolutely right. So we're basically having a rebound from COVID, but it's not the rebound people think it is. And we're in short supply right now. The warehouses are not necessarily empty, but they will be very fast if the ports don't open. Let's get into the PowerPoint because we're going to have an extended news segment today because it's going to affect everybody. Remember, this is a prepping show. Yeah, we can talk about off-grid building all you want, but if this October becomes Red October and we got lots of issues, you need to start thinking about prepping and off-gridding later at another time in your life. Let's get into it right here. So prep Red October. That is the only people. It's time to go before the fuel runs out in the first week and rationing and long lines. Highly recommend anyone listening to the show, go get gasoline, plenty of it. If you got gas tanks, fill them up. Fill up your vehicles by end of the day, Monday the 30th. All I'm going to recommend to you. Here we go. Let's talk about this, Thomas. This is the Obama, Biden, Harris economy. Look at this.
Yeah, there you go. Gasoline 51%, right?
Yep.
We just got a notice for our house down in Phoenix. They will raise electricity, water, garbage, the whole 9 yards. Guess what they raise on my off-grid ranch? Nothing.
Oh my God, nothing. You're right, because power doesn't affect you because
nope.
You generate your own power and you generate your own water, so you don't get a water bill, do you?
No water bill.
You got your own sanitation field, don't you?
Nope.
And so people like Chemo, who we've had on the show before, they make their own food, or a lot of it anyways, eggs and things of that nature, right?
Right. A lot of it. We also make our own food up there with tons of eggs from the chickens. I have a crazy rooster, Herbert. He's a little bit hostile. So he chases always Stefan around. At first, Stefan went into the coop. It was like, oh, he's cool. Say, wait till he figures out you steal the eggs. I mean, he's a massive boy. He's like a dog. He's mean. But we have eggs. We have a greenhouse. We have all this kind of stuff. And we have one thing, fellas, and you should take care of that. We have boxes and boxes full of seeds.
And what are the seeds for, Thomas? To plant them when you get a chance, right? Next spring?
Yeah. Boxes and boxes full of seeds from carrots, tomatoes, everything. Because most of the plants today cannot be reproduced by the plant alone. So those seeds are not the same anymore like we had 20, 30 years ago. They're made in a way that they don't reproduce themselves.
Yep, understood. Wow. So let's talk about 1st of October has a lot going on. So we had the United Nations stealing the power of 193 nations, claiming through some silent procedure that they're in charge of a global pandemic emergency. So even though the World Health Organization did not get the pandemic treaty rammed through, the UN, of course, had a backdoor operation instead. But that's the corporation of the United States. That's not the Republic. That's not us patriots and preppers and off-gridders, and that's not Second Amendment advocates. So at the end of the day here, the report released during the United Nations General Assembly talks ahead of the COP29 climate summit. They want to tax tax the world, tax the basically ruined economy, additional $5 trillion from around the world. They want to tax the rich. They want to tax everybody. They want to end oil subsidies. They talk about unlocking, no, talk about stealing $5 trillion annually for climate action. Thomas, this is a disaster on top of everything else.
Absolutely. Look how much we're in debt right now. What did I say? 28 trillion?
And right, and the money wouldn't go to the debt. The money would go to the globals who are already rich and been stealing money for 50 years. Totally
Right.
crazy. So here we go. OPEC is announcing production cuts, and it might happen on the 1st of October, Thomas. Well, that'd be interesting. We're going to have, with the ports locked, we're going to have energy offshore. OPEC's going to cut it, and that's going to impact, even without war, it's going to impact the global economy. They go to this, they're going to global contraction, right? No question we're going to have a recession or something worse coming up.
I actually think we're already in a recession.
I agree.
We're in a silent recession. Nobody realizes it yet.
So look at this, people. I want to just show you something. October 1st, October 1st, October 1st. Oh, Basel III compliance locks in on the 1st of October. Well, what does that mean? One, requiring banks to maintain minimum capital reserve. Oh, they didn't have to do that during the Biden regime, right? It was zero. But now Basel kicks in and it's no longer zero. Stress testing the banking system by implementation of leverage requirements. Oh, so the banks are getting stress tests in October. Let's continue. Additional capital liquidity requirements for systematically important banks. Wow, this is real interesting. So many believe that 3 or 4 banks, the big banks in America, right? Citibank, Chase Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, will survive. But there's another group out there that believes 700 to 900 medium-sized banks will fail in October due to the Basel III requirements, that they'll fail 1, 2, or all 3 of these new compliance regulations. Thomas, if we get banks failing in October and we get the ports locked down with no oil coming in and energy rationing and disruption to food delivery by middle of October, what is this going to look like this month?
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. If you have let's say you have just what we recently had it, right? When this so-called glitch in the computer system worldwide and nobody could use ATMs. We just have to think about one scenario. All ATM machines in America would stop working this evening. You would have a major disaster in this country tomorrow.
Yeah.
People are not thinking about this. It's like just let those ATM machines not working anymore. You're not getting no fuel. You're not getting.
How about and the same thing for credit cards? What if the credit cards go down at the same time the ATM goes down?
Right, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we would have civil unrest literally within a couple of hours. People will lose their BBs. That's the reality.
Unbelievable. Let's go to the next one. So back to the ports. What the gentleman from the Appalachian Prepper 2.0, and I loved his 2-minute download. He didn't mention what they're looking for. They're looking for a 77% increase in wages. Now, why is that? Well, let's go back to, so now we know why union workers are voting for Trump, President Trump, because he's the man of the economy. Kamala Harris and Biden are not. So this explains why everyone thinks they're greedy. They're not greedy. They're trying to survive the next 5 years. They won't get it. If they agree to a 77% increase, it's over a number of years. It wouldn't happen increase now, but it would be rolled out over 5 years. But even that is a very steep target.
The people are not greedy, James. I recently looked up, I watched a documentary. The average home price, the median home price in the 80s in America was like something like $60,000, $70,000.
Correct.
Now we're looking at 450,000, something like that.
Yep.
Plus, right? Have the wages gone up since the 80s, like 4, 5, 6, 7 times? No, they did not. So with the current system or the current situation, what people are making, you cannot make it anymore. Let's be very clear. The credit card debt in America is higher than ever before. Who is going to pay this back? I mean, people buying groceries on credit cards. So we can all sing Kumbaya and we can pretend it doesn't exist. But it's here. It's there. So the inflation is skyrocket high. The wages are not adequate anymore for what you're gonna pay for stuff today. I mean, even I lost it recently when my new car insurance bill came, and it went from $550 to $790.
And if you
Right?
live in a community like James does in Florida, your HOA fees are going up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got insurance in the house going up, insurance in the car going up. We got hit. You know, I've had a clean record for 40 years. It's all going up, right? And you have this and that. It's totally insane. That's
Right.
what's going on.
Buddy of mine who owns a truck repair shop called me, said, "Hey, guess what? I got my new insurance bill. Is it so far I pay like for liability and all this kind of stuff for my shop, $3,000 a month. It went up to $9,800 a month. So what is he supposed to do? He got to raise his prices. So on the other hand, we have politicians who are saying, "Oh, we will put an end to the price gouging." It's not the people who do the
Price
gouging.
gouging at the end of Congress. And we're going to get in a minute to Congress because there's some big news there. But again, this is October 1st. So all the stuff is next Tuesday. So people, you got to really understand what's coming. And by the way, the union and the port owners, they're not negotiating right. They haven't talked all week. So it's not like this is going to be resolved. It's not in court yet. Could a court force it? Maybe. But we're going to find out if that happens at all. So here's another impact on so not only do we get the Appalachian Prepper 2.0 talk about the energy issue, there's $1.4 billion in weekly ag trade at risk if the port's locked down. Thomas.
Yeah, that will be a major deal. I mean, this is I'm afraid if they hold on to that,
Yeah.
we see a massive shortage in the US.
Yeah, and we send rice and we send corn and we send soybeans, we send
Right.
whatever overseas to not only China but to other parts of the world. And so this 1.4 billion a week would not happen.
Right.
Totally crazy. But it gets better. So another event on October 1st. Remember how Biden and Harris are promising, we're going to student loan forgiveness, and the court shut that down because it's not legal.
Yeah.
Anyways, people have to begin repaying their student loans on the 1st of October. So if they've had a holiday for a couple of years from the Biden regime and not repaying, now this is a new bill to go with all of the other increases. You now have to go back and pay the student loan. So let me run through these average student loan debt. Dental school is $292,000. Medical school, $196,000. Veterinary school, $183,000. Pharmacist, $172,000. Law school, $145,000. MBA, $66,000. And just undergrad students across the board, whatever you might be learning, is probably around 50, 60, or even up to $100,000. This is a big deal, Thomas. If now people have to go do it. And you mentioned to me last week, we did have a show last week, but you mentioned that Volkswagen has laid off 30,000 people in Germany. Is that true?
That's true. 30,000 of 120,000 total.
So this is a global issue. It's not just America with a recession. There's a global depression on the horizon.
Oh yeah, it's not only Volkswagen, it's Bosch, it's Siemens, it's all the big players, right, in Europe.
Yeah.
And those are global players. I mean, it's not like a European or American thing. That's a global thing.
Now, I'm not an expert in finance, but I already know if you're going from one system that's been around for 50 years, LIBOR, right, on rates, you're now implementing a brand new system on October 1st. So no one knows how this is really going to work. So if you go from LIBOR, which used to give the rates for banking and stuff, but now it's called secure overnight financing rate. Thomas, I don't know what this means. All I know is when you take a system that's worked for 50 years and you kick it to the curbside, you implement a new system, not everything works out as planned. Thomas.
I'm not a financial expert either, but you know that everything you change causes friction.
Yep.
Right? That's what we say in engineering. You never touch a running system because once you change it, it causes a lot of problems.
Correct. A running system is a good analogy for LIBOR. It's been running for a long time, and now it's gone. And they're going to install a new system beginning next Tuesday, October 1st again. Wow, this is so we're not getting the witching hour of Halloween yet. We're getting everything up front on October 1st. And the stuff's going to hit the fan, and the fan's going to be turned on high, in my opinion, particularly if the sports are shut down. So this is another one. I know this is a blurry calendar. What can I do? I got this image off of Google Images, but you don't need to read this. You see colors on the screen. Well, colors on the screen is usually for January, February, March, right? You can see it. This is when Congress is in session. Congress had recessed, as they always do in summer and August. They were back in session in September, and lo and behold, all the month of October and the first 10 days or 11 days of November, Congress is not in session. I don't even remember this. So if we have a financial crash, Congress would go in for emergency funding, but it looks like they're not going to be able to do that, Thomas. They're out for whatever the reason is. They're not in session for the next 6 weeks. They're not even there on Monday the 30th. So basically, today's the last day of Congress. I just find this extremely interesting how all these October 1st dates and events line up.
Maybe they're all going to the beach, James. I guess, they have a good
Or,
time.
or they're going somewhere else. I'm not going to go venture what that could be, but Congress is out. So your own government's not going to save us, Americans, people. Maybe that should be a lesson for us. Maybe we depend less on big government because Congress is not going to be there to save anybody. And you know what? So there's two things you should do in prepping. We're going to talk. We've got 2 videos on water. One's a simple water idea if you're out in the woods or up in the Appalachians or wherever in this country with a bottle of water. You see how simple this is. Really, it's really brilliant. It's so simple. And another one's a 9-minute water video filtration. We're playing the whole thing because people, you need to start thinking about water. If the foods go down, you need at least water, especially adults. Children need a lot more than that, right? They need calories. But we can go on for a number of days without food. And water is the key, though. Without water, we're all in trouble, right? But you go to Idaho Armored Vault, think about buying gold and silver because the financial markets are going to rumble, in our opinion, in October. Call up 208-468-3600. Tell them you're referred to by James Graham McMee, by gold, by silver, by IRAs, because if the stock markets go upside down, your debt notes called currency is not going to save you. Gold and silver, physical, tangible assets. Food prep. Yep, we're going to get back into this a little bit later. And then, boom. Thomas, go to the store, talk about it.
Yeah, so we talk about water today a lot. So we, as you know, we designed an electric-powered drilling rig, which is probably the cheapest you can get now on the market, which we sell through the online store. I think actually every community should have the capability of drilling their own well. And unless you got to go below or deeper than 450 feet, that drill rig will take care of you. And we did it electrically powered because if you're a true off-gridder, you normally also have solar systems. So you're not needing any fuel to operate that rig. It's all electric powered. So pretty much I can use this on my ranch, plug it in and let's go. Our big drill rig, which we have, needs diesel fuel. So if there's no more diesel available, good, we have the rig, right? But it's not drilling anything.
Correct. Very important.
Water is life, period.
Yeah, water's life. We're going to get into water in a second. I really want you want to talk about nuclear weapons in Russia because that is, there's 3 main threats here, right? It's the economic system, which goes from the ports to the banking system, all that. That's one threat that we're facing in October. The third thing, though, Thomas, is a nuclear war showdown. We've gone kinetic between Russia and Ukraine in February 2022. We went kinetic worldwide with Israel and Gaza and the Mideast. Now you got Yemen involved. You've got Iran involved, and we got the BRICS nation lining up behind Iran and Hezbollah, and we got the West lining up behind Israel. So we are right now basically in a showdown, and the fact that long-range missiles and drones are being fired deep into Russia now. Putin has already warned the tiny island of Britain, that's his words, not mine, tiny island of Britain, I can give you a nuclear blast underwater and create a tidal wave and drown your entire population. And Putin has said this, so he's not against the people of the West, only against the decision makers or the governors or the government. So we have a nuclear showdown as a possibility. Thomas, talk to us about what you know about nuclear war.
Before I talk about the nuclear and the doctrine, which has been changed in Russia a couple of days ago, I want to talk about three things here. I recently listened to a very reputable German journalist. He got interviewed. And he was talking about there's no more way out of this situation. We have three scenarios here. Hyperinflation, complete change of the currencies, which has failed in a project in Africa. Actually, they tried it already. The people didn't take it on. They tried to push that digital currency over the centralized banks down there. It failed. He talks about now the new strategy. And another thing is war. So those are the three scenarios. There is no other way out anymore. He talks about also about that America is not governed by Washington. There's someone else behind it. He named, I don't want to name it.
I agree with that.
Right?
That's not conspiracy. We all know that Biden and Harris and Obama, they're all puppets. But go on.
Right. They are. So he went deeply into the rabbit hole. But here comes the thing. I watched this, and then in the German news right away that Putin. So first and foremost, I listened to another news guy from Germany, and he interviewed some high guy in Russia. And they said, so Putin, because they were always talking about he's just doing, threats and nothing is going to happen. Putin is actually pro-West. He's trying not to have it escalated, but Putin has no problem in his own country. The people feeling threatened by the West, and he's losing support, so he's getting pushed to take action. So he changed the doctrine of Russia, how they use military weapons a couple of days ago. And what it says now is that any country, nuclear or not nuclear, who engages or supports another country which threatens Russia will be automatically seen as an enemy, as an act of war. So that changes everything. That means if we continue to support the Ukraine the way we're doing it right now, actively, then his doctrine allows him now to use nuclear weapons as a countermeasure. And that's pretty serious now.
And there's a difference between tactical nuclear weapons, right, and the big bombs. Do you want to talk about tactical nuclear weapons, which just target certain things? Go ahead.
Yeah, tactical nuclear weapons, from my understanding, is really just a very limited nuclear strike. But they have a nuclear weapon, it's called Tsar or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a 300-mile blast radius. I mean, can you imagine if one of these...
They talk about setting it off underwater, which would create a 600-foot tidal wave or tsunami, and they can direct it in one direction. Do it off New York City if they wanted to. They could do it off of that tiny island called Britain, right? And just really inundate them. So those are threats, and even UK doesn't have that kind of weapon.
Man, think about it. How big was the rigmarole in the US during the Cuban Missile Crisis, right?
Yeah.
And now we have a way worse situation than ever, and people, kumbaya, nothing is going to happen.
And we got China's got submarines and nuclear weapons, and they're off the coast of the Pacific side. So we got Russia in the Atlantic, China in the Pacific, and they're part of the BRICS nation.
Right.
So I mean, it's really we're coming to a very dangerous spot. That's why I want to play this next video, Thomas, for water. This is simple. If you have to bug out and you got these heavy, multi-gallon jug water, well, this is something you do. It's very simple, and this way you're not wasting water. Here we go. Real simple. I love this video because of simplicity. Simple bottle of water. Look at this, a straw and a bottle of water. Here you go. How efficient is that? You're not wasting water. People trying to pour it out of there. You're hanging on a tree. You poke a little hole. Make sure you have a few straws with you, and you can do that, Thomas. You like that idea?
I like it, yeah. Because we all use way too much water anyway.
Correct.
We wash our hands with the faucet full open. Once you live off grid, you stop doing these kind of things. Okay,
Yes.
everything. You don't need that much water. What you waste like in a suburb house, whether you use the shower or washing your hands. I mean, you gushing a ton of water down into the drain. And when you live off grid, like in a high desert state like where we are, you watch how much water you really are using. Well, we can use as much as we want to the wells, but you still you create a different sense of how you're using resources.
Yep. Now, there was big news that came out yesterday. The U.S. health agencies that have been poisoning children through a lot of vectors. I won't go into any of those vectors today. They come to the realization, they finally start to agree that there's too much fluoride in American municipal drinking water, and it's harmful for babies and children, lowering their IQs. And it sounds like we're turning the corner on that. You know, I know my cousins in Norway drank from wells. They come to New York City to take a shower. They could smell the chlorine coming out of the shower.
That's
right.
My sister was just complaining about that.
So it's everywhere. The chlorine's one thing, but fluoride's even worse. And fluoride was used as a gas in World War II for the Nazis experiments. Is that true?
I don't know exactly what they used, but I can tell you, my sister just came from Germany. She said, man, I take a shower here, everything smells like chlorine. She said, how blessed are we in Germany turning on the faucet and we can drink this water actually. I said, yeah, don't drink this water here. You don't want to do this. And she really complained about it. She said, I smell chlorine everywhere.
Yep. And people that are not used to it can smell. We can't because we're it's just part of our background scent and noise and everything.
Right.
We got a 9-minute video. We're playing the whole thing in the show because, like I said, looks like the stuff's really going to hit the fan in Red October, and we want you people to really start thinking differently. So we're playing a 9-minute video right now on water filtration, right? Where people are home and you're running out of water. Well, the water coming out of your faucet you might end up with as the only source if you've gone through all your bottles and whatever, right? Or you need to filter water from a pool. I have a pool, that kind of stuff. Very important to prepare for water emergency if we have an extended lockdown period or war period or whatever might be coming. Here we go. And Thomas and I will be back.
A low-cost way to create and store RO water. We'll be using a 4-stage RO DI filter, a float valve, a pressure-activated solenoid valve, and a 32-gallon trash can. So I'm going to make the hole for the cords high up on the container just above one of the handles. Just above the other handle, I'm going to drill a hole for the water line out. And between these two, I'm going to drill a hole for the float valve, but I'm going to make the hole lower in the container, placing the float valve about 4 inches below the other 2 holes. This will lower my capacity overall, but give me more margin for error as far as the water. Okay, so now we're going to install the float valve. The float valve has 2 nuts on it. The nut that actually fastens it to the wall of the container, and the compression nut for the water line, which will go on last. So to install the float valve, you'll need to make sure that the silicone washer is on the inside of the container against the wall, like so. Making sure that it's on all the way, you'll then install the nut.
Oh yeah, Thomas, I like this kind of demonstration.
Now, these are plastic parts, so when you tighten the nut down with your tool, just give it a quarter turn or so. Don't over tighten it or it will break. And then you can thread your compression nut on. And that's it. Okay, now it's time to install the pumps and the heater, starting with the heater. So, thread the cord through the hole that was made for the cords, like so, and place the heater right in the middle of the container. Then we'll add the circulation pump, again, threading the cord through, And then we'll place it right next to the heater. So next we'll add the pump for the water line out. Again, I'm going to thread the cord through, but instead of placing the pump on the bottom of the container, I'm going to place it slightly higher up on the wall of the container so that when the water level goes down, it'll stay above the heater so the heater won't run dry. For the water line out, I'm going to use this clear vinyl tubing. I'm going to run a piece long enough from the pump to reach the wall of the container, at which point I'll install this brass elbow. The elbow will keep the water line outside of the container from kinking.
I like it. Very good so far.
That's it. So your container will need to be stored near an accessible water source, and in my case, near electrical outlets to power the pumps and the heater. So I'll be placing mine in the kitchen and using the cold water line under the sink. So now that I have my container placed in the kitchen, I need to run a water line to it. So I'm going to use the cold water line under my kitchen sink. And because I want to still be able to use my kitchen sink as well as the RO, I need to use a T-valve. This T-valve is 3/8 NPT threaded, which is what my sink setup uses. It's not the same for everyone, so make sure you do your research there. This T-valve also uses a push-to-fit system for the...
So in my house, I have a garage with a sink, so I wouldn't need the T-valve if I ran this out in the garage. Just putting that out there.
1/4 water line to the RO system. So now to install the T-valve, we first need to turn off the water and disconnect the line to the sink. So with the water off, I'll grab my wrench here and undo the line to the sink. This valve is nice in that it has rubber washers attached to it, so you don't really need to use any Teflon tape or anything like that to prevent it from leaking. So I'm just going to tighten that onto there. And doesn't need to be crazy tight, just going to snug it up. And then I'll reattach my line to the sink. Again, just sort of snugging it up. If you over tighten it, it will leak. Alright, so now I'm going to close the line out valve, dry things off a little bit, and turn the water back on and see if we get any leaks.
No leaks.
Okay. Alright, so now with my 3 lines, I'm going to start by connecting the water supply line into the RO filter. And it's a push-to-fit system, so pretty easy. Press the line in, push it till it clicks, give it a tug, and it should be connected. Okay, so now that I have my line into the filter, I'm going to run my clean water RO line out of the filter into the auto shut-off valve on the screw side of the valve, which is opposite of the side that says in. And the other end of that is going to run to the float valve. And then my wastewater line just going to run from the flow restrictor on top of the filter is going to run to the fitting labeled in. And then the line to the drain will run from that. The RO has been running all night, and as you can see, the water has filled up to the float valve and turned off. I'm going to take the lid off here and fill up a bucket to demonstrate the pump. So I have the pump hooked up to this line out, and the pump is connected to an outlet switch down there. So when I hit the switch on the pump, the bucket fills up. So one important thing I should note is if you have the line longer than this below, and it dips below the water line, it can create sort of a siphon effect. So after you turn the pump off, the water will still come out. I just made sure that the line that I cut is above the water line so that that doesn't happen. So as this bucket fills up, the float valve will dip back down. And you can see now the water is coming out of the float valve.
That's it. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, very effective for a cheap price to do it this way.
Yeah, very effective. And like I
Okay.
said, if you have a separate sink like I do in my garage, I wouldn't need a P valve. You know, that's just one extra step I wouldn't have to go do. I'd literally go plug it in because I use that sink out in the garage like once in a blue moon, not too often.
No, it's a good system. It's a good idea.
Yep, very good idea. And so people have to think about, like Thomas said in the first one with the bottle and the straw, don't waste your water. You got to
Right.
make it last, right? Otherwise, you go blow through the water. You don't need to do that. And the second one, if you're looking long term, that's an inexpensive filtration system. And there's others, and there's Berkey and stuff. But I think if the stuff hits the fan, you're going to see, as Thomas point earlier in the show about inventory and warehouses being down in products, you're not going to be able to find stuff if everyone beginning in a couple of weeks in October begin thinking like, oh my God, I have to get water and I have to go here and I have to go do this. My garage is full with bottles of water. I've been prepping since 2020 as far as living in a suburb. I've been prepping that way. I'm not living off grid like Thomas, but the idea is similar. I got boxes of meal prep ready. I got a couple containers for 2 months of food. I got lots of cans of tuna fish and things of that nature, things that will last long. What other foods, Thomas, do you think is good besides, the usual?
Yeah, we have a ton of rice because it lasts forever, right? A ton of
Yep.
noodles, which lasts forever. I mean, you can live off noodles every day but yeah, if
Clean water and noodles, heat it up, and that's all you need, right?
that's all you need. I mean, even to cook the noodles, you don't need the cleanest water because you're cooking it.
Yeah,
So, right.
I've seen some prepping shows where the Amish have a very special way of eggs, not even cooking them, like storing them for 6 months, not in a fridge, but like literally in a closet. And they
Right.
put a certain solution. So I'll go find that video because I think it's something we need to consider. We have to think of storing out of our usual electricity world that we live in, because if the grids go down, it's not going to matter.
Correct. You don't have a refrigerator anymore. You don't have a freezer. So you got to think about that.
Right.
Canned food lasts forever. Way, way beyond the expiration date. I mean, that canned food does not go down at all. Noodles, rice, everything what you have to cook with water, which is dried before.
Yep.
For a long time. Just make sure you store it dry. That's the most important thing. So what we actually normally do, we use those big DeWalt plastic boxes you use on construction sites.
Yep.
and they are perfect for storing food. You pack those up, you put a little bit, one of these little packs in there, which keeps the moisture out of the air. You close those things, you're good to go.
You know what the Vikings used to do, and this is very important for people to understand. They didn't have any electricity or any storage as far as temperature. Sure, they had winters and stuff, but to go overseas, how did the Vikings do it? They would get a wood barrel. They would line it with burnt sawdust, right? Like really hyper dry sawdust. They would get sawdust from all the sawdust. They collect it, right? So there was no waste product in building a wooden Viking ship or wooden house or anything. They would save the sawdust. They put it in layers, and what they do is cod season up in the Lofoten Islands of Norway is from February to end of April, and they catch all of the cod, and then they cut off the heads, and the heads are smelling, and it's a lot of protein though to make soup, and they put it on one fish drying rack, and they cut the cods in half and dry them, and they sun dry them for weeks out in the sun. And then by June, so from April to June, they got this dried cod, and then they would be able to store it in these layers of burnt oak sawdust all the way up, and salt. And so it was I guess beef jerky or something, right? And all this cod was dried, and they could eat it, and there's a ton of protein, and that is how they cross the oceans. Thomas.
Yeah, I mean they're doing this for a long time. We forgot that people in the past didn't have fridges.
Correct.
And it was just working just fine, right? For example, if you do Black Forest ham, right? Because it's in salt, you can keep the stuff forever. You don't need a refrigerator to store that stuff. And that's how we actually, when I grew up on the farm, I told you, grew up on a Bavarian farm. Yep. We made our own Black Forest ham, or in this case, it's called Geselchtes in Bavaria. It's a very salty smoked meat. And we had those things hanging in the basement for a year before you eat it. You couldn't pay this anymore. It would be so expensive today. You go in the store, but it tastes phenomenal and it lasts forever.
And ignore the government. The government's been lying to you about sugar and salt for 60 years. The reality is we need salt. Salt retains water. You have lack of water, lack of food, you dehydrate very quickly. Salt prevents the dehydration from accelerating. Salt's very important.
Also, there's something in the salt which you need anyway. But what I also want to mention, James, almost forgot it. When you do prepping, think about one thing. Think about the real possibility of a nuclear strike.
Yeah.
But I have at my place, at my off-grid place, I have a ton of tablets, iodized, whatever it's called. You can buy it on Amazon or wherever you want to buy it. And in case of radiation poisoning, you take those. Because the reality is we all are so afraid about those nuclear weapons, and we think there's 10,000 years radioactivity. It's not true. In a nuclear weapon has nothing to do with if a nuclear power plant goes up. The nuclear power plant radiates continuously and exposes radioactive material to the environment. A nuclear weapon goes off, and within 14
it vaporizes.
Right. In 14 days, you're not supposed to eat the dirt on the ground, but you're pretty good again. So, but during that time, think about medication which can prevent nuclear, what is called radiation.
Yeah, you're very. I forgot about that. First aid kits, medication, whatever medication you have, do not in 2 weeks run because you're out of medication. What I do is I buy 2 of everything now, because it depends. And if it's really important, I buy 4 of it. I buy all the stuff up front, has a shelf life, not concerned about it. I do it because when everyone runs to the market at the same time, it disappears quickly from the shelves. Thomas?
Right. Also, a regular good mask, which you'd use for spraying cars in the booth, those are pretty effective. Those 3Ms, those really with 2 filters on the side.
N95 for what Thomas is talking about, which is asbestos, which is dust, the sheetrock dust, right? The contractors use these every day. Thomas?
You get those fairly cheap at, I don't know, Lowe's, I think, sells at Home Depot. Pretty much
I'd go get them now if you're concerned about fallout or anything even remotely like that. Like I live down in Sarasota County. Well, why is that a big deal? I mean, Sarasota itself's not a target for anybody, but there is CENTCOM, which is an hour north of me, and there's McGill Air Force Base an hour north of me in Tampa. So I could be in fallout range. I don't know, right? And so that's something to consider about. Thomas?
Yeah, because maybe everything is okay within 2 weeks, but during the 2 weeks, you maybe got to move. You got to go somewhere, right? Also, it's probably a good thing to have. I don't know if you know those. Those are heavy weather clothing, which we used on sailboats. They're absolutely watertight. They're super. They have a hat on. You almost look like these guys you see in the movies, in the Doomsday movies, right?
Yep.
You have some duct tape and some rubber gloves, and you can close all this stuff up with your mask. So that's a very cheap way to have a fairly protective like gear if you gotta move. Because we should not axe out the possibility that Russia sooner or later says, guys, we got enough. This is it. Right? We are here. I think we're on the last straw with these guys.
Oh, I really agree with you there. Let's wrap up the show two ways. One is your sister comes in with a crew from Germany. What are they doing? What are you doing after the show today?
First thing we do, we pick up a bunch of trusses for an off-grid house. So we're helping a friend to set up the house as fast as we can. You interviewed her, Kelly. So
Yep.
we're trying to set up her place because right now she's off-grid, but she still lives in the RV. And that's not sustainable during the winter. At least not very comfortable, let's call
No.
it this. So we all help together now, setting up her place. She's a single woman out there, right? So that's not easy in the first place. She was supposed to come with her boyfriend. So he kind of thought that it's probably better to stay in California. It's a safe place to be.
Yeah,
So
until the nuclear bombs go off, he's in a safe place.
it's okay. I mean, Silicon Valley is not the first target where the communication of the world is, right? He lives right next to it. It's definitely a safe place. And Half Moon Bay in California, where all the missile guidance systems are, right next to San Francisco, very safe place.
Nothing to think about.
Right. So we're helping her to get this. I will actually get the camera out there. So we record every step, what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty big home, but her site is very hard to access, which you showed a couple of videos.
Yeah, we showed that a couple of weeks ago. So last thing, Thomas, are you coming to the Food Forest next week in Florida?
I'm trying to. I'm not sure because we are full in this construction now. That's the problem.
All right. So at some point in October, as long as we got transportation and gas, Thomas is going to try to make his way out to Jim Gale's Food Forest. I might go take a trip myself to Jim Gale's Food Forest myself, pick up some videotape, and then next Friday have a show if Thomas can't make it out here.
Yeah, because my schedule is so full right now. As you can imagine, we have 5,500 landowners up there, and everybody starts now panicking, right? And I mean, I'm really busy right now. All I can say is I warned about this now for years, and everybody was like, "Oh, yeah."
He wrote a letter to President Trump in November of 2019. I've read the letter. So that's before COVID, before pandemic, before lockdowns. And he warned that the trucking and logistics and supply chain issue was going to be a major problem in the first half of this decade. And Thomas is 100% right.
Yeah, I wrote 3 pages about the entire scenario, right?
Yeah, maybe we'll read maybe we'll read some of it on the next show. Thomas, thank you very much. Audience, we love you. Think water, think medicine, think food. Because if the port strikes happen, you're going to see something you've never seen in your lifetime, and it's going to be hardcore. And when supply and demand, when millions of people are going for thousands of things, there's going to be people losing their BBs, as Tom said. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.
Prepping America. Ready for anything.